Okay, Council, I mean, like, I think I learned this in my first year at Enterprise Group when I started working with them as a young corporate guy. When you go for your Monday meetings, they tell you hope is not a strategy. You know, hope has never been a strategy. If you hire somebody to work for you and he tells you that I am hoping, fire him, because he's not telling you anything. I think the president's statement is mainly a very politically convenient. It's a politically convenient statement that is mistaking the calm after the storm to be strength enough to weather the next one. So we went through a very difficult period, and we should not mistake it. I'm glad we're even having this conversation today, because now we can discuss 2022 proper. We started January 2022 with dollar at about $6. We ended the year with dollar somewhere in double figures. At some point, we even lost track. June, July 2022, we're checking the dollar rate every hour. It was at some point like a fun pack on social media with Adam and Co. You go the next minute is 10 cedis, you come the next minute is 11 cedis. There was a crisis. There is no way anybody in good faith that believes in God, that fears God and the devil, can tell us that 2022 was normal and that everything that happened in 2022 was as a result of a certain group of persons' mismanagement. Surely, there were things that were outside their control. Indeed, if certain things were in place at the time, the economy would have been able to withstand those things better than it did. So no doubt about that. Absolutely no doubt about that. That notwithstanding, we went through 2022 and 2023 without having a proper conversation around these issues, because we allowed politics to take a major part of it. In fact, something that all of us have forgotten is that one of the things that knocked us almost into a coma was our debt to GDP. And we all should acknowledge that that debt to GDP situation was not merely because government of Ghana went to borrow too much at the time, but also a lot to do with the crisis that our currency suffered as a result of the external shocks, that at some point our debt was made up of 40 or so % interest exchange rate differentials. That you owed so much, but because your currency had gotten really, really bad, it's, shot up your debt in dollar terms, and that affects your situation on the international market. But all these conversations were ignored. So sometimes when you sit down, if you don't take care, you may sound very unpatriotic with our current situation and say that, it's good we are all seeing that external shocks have very significant impact on our economy. Now the point here is this. If the president says we are resilient, what is he pointing at? Because, Council, these macroeconomic figures you are mentioning have nothing to do with the external pressures that are coming. This is basically had to do with how you are looking now. But how you are looking, is it enough to survive what is coming? There are two different things. You are stepping out to a party. You've picked your best clothes. But when you go out, you're going to meet Edem Agbana and Senyo Hosi and Co. Is your clothes enough to match them? Yours is the best in your wardrobe. But they are coming with a bigger, better option than yours. And those are the conversations that we must have. For me, this is the fourth time I'm saying here on your show this year, from last year to now, that it's time for the NDC government to step back a bit. There is now calm after the storm, and answer certain very important questions and tell us what the solutions they have for us. Number one, what was your diagnosis of the Ghanaian economy? And since you came to office, what has been your prognosis? What has been the specific interventions that you have put in place to address these diagnoses? Otherwise, do you know what I think? The NDC government is basically leading this country. When you go and drop yourself in the sea, when we were kids, I was in Agona Swedru. Sometimes we travel to Windy Bay Beach. When the storm is coming, you do this. They taught us that you cross your fingers like this. Then you enter. Because when you enter, by the time you come out, Adam would, understand this. You will find yourself somewhere, but you don't really know where you are going. But what you know is that if you cross your fingers well, you won't go in. It will bring you out. That is basically what I think we are going through. Because think about it. These macroeconomic indicators, since we went to IMF in 2023, have been improving. They have been improving. In fact, between 2023 and 2024, our inflation that went all the way to 54% had dropped to 23%. So clearly, anybody that is doing an objective analysis can tell you that, well, looking at how it moved from 54 to 23, we're already on a certain pedestal. Don't forget that all these improved macroeconomic indicators are on the back of an existing IMF program. So we don't even know how we are going to behave or act post the IMF program. This economy should survive for all of us, Council. What we went through in 2022 to 2023, nobody should go through that again. In fact, if you recall, the 2022 crisis is what led this country to begin to go into the gold buying, arrangement heavily. Because by mid-2022 or so, we had just 8 tons of reserves in gold. By end of 2024, we had 30 tons. It means that the country learned something, that the shocks that came for which we could not survive, we had to put other interventions in place, and then the gold came. Today.
And on that point, you had asked, what has the government done?
No, I
know that there has been a deliberate policy in the gold area.
I would never do that. I'm one of the people in opposition that have always insisted that I will never take the credit of the improved macroeconomic indicators from the government. In fact, if I do that, I will be contradicting myself, because I insist that the improved macroeconomic indicators is as a result of a lot of things that this country had put in place post-2022. The governor of Bank of Ghana then, under the MPP, said it, that even in 2024, if he wanted to bring dollar to 8 cedis, he could. And indeed, he could have done it.
He wouldn't have been able to sustain it.
Please, you let me make my point.
He wouldn't have been able to sustain it.
Because he had enough gold to do exactly what this government is doing.
That would just be for 2 months.
Oh, I beg you. It's okay. Even if it was 3 months. You understand? So, somebody could have done it for 2 months.
But there's a little difficulty, people appreciating, especially you, the politicians, when you communicate. Because within 2017, 2018, 2019, when Akufo-Addo was touting the economic, figures, macroeconomic figures, how we're doing well. We got a single, digit inflation and so on. Our import cover was also good at the time. The NDC was minded to remind you that you had come to inherit an IMF program, which they had done. And they had put things in place to get you into that, trajectory.
Perfect.
But you will not accept it.
Perfect.
Today you are saying you took us to an IMF program that is keeping the economy in the trajectory that it is. So we should acknowledge that.
On that argument, stick to that argument. But the MPP government at the time said that, you know what? In addition to all the things that are going on, for us to be resilient and have our fundamentals right, the Ghanaian economy has one major problem: lack of local production. That we are too import dependent. So in our view, the way to deal with this fundamental challenge is to boost our production. Let's put some investment in private sector to increase industries, increase manufacturing, reduce production. So at least, whilst these temporary measures are keeping us afloat, we'll be able to have a long-term, way out of this.
Therefore,
so
1D, 1F.
So it brings me to the question: whilst the government is touting all these things, can they show us specifically the things that are being put in place or have been put in place? Because there's a difference between saying we are becoming resilient from we are resilient.
Exactly.
The government's point now is that they are resilient.
That's wrong.
I tell you everything that I believe in. Yeah. For you to tell this Ghanaian economy is resilient, you must promise me that you are doing 80% production here. Otherwise, you are not anywhere close to even opening your eyes in times of a crisis. Listen, Council, any 10 cedis that you hold in this country, 8 cedis goes back to dollar. It's 80-20. If I dash Senior Hosi 10 cedis right now, he's going to buy items, 8 of which are coming from abroad.
Just from an economic perspective, just for correction.
So, no, you let me
it's
land.
Not correct.
Let me land, beg you. I don't want to lose my thought process. You understand? Whatever it is, a lot of the money that we receive goes back into importation. And so if you come and tell me that you are resilient, and yet the things that are happening in places where you trade with, you have no control over. You are basically either misleading us, or you are setting yourself up again for another future attack, which you would try to run away from. See, this government has made so many statements, both from opposition and in government, that whenever you bring it up, we play their videos to them, and you see them running away from it. And I don't see why the president should put himself in such a situation. Even worse is when his own governor is contradicting him. The governor was clear.
Contradicting him on what?
The governor was clear that the Iran war could easily affect some of the macroeconomic indicators that we are enjoying now.
But the governor has also said that we have the domestic situation. Let me look for his own words. Yes, fairly favorable domestic conditions that we're going to put us in what he actually said in a high situation to where he said favorable domestic macroeconomic conditions and high prevailing real interest rates provide scope to ease the policy rate further. So he was looking at this
Contradictions
situation.
Continue.
Yeah.
Contradictions continue. Locking themselves in a tight corner continue. Listen, today, as we sit here, if we wake up tomorrow morning and dollar is $2,000, this economy is finished. Zero. As we speak now, a resilient economy cannot even pay salaries. A resilient economy has over 70,000.
Did you mean to say gold or you said dollar is 2,000?
No, gold. I said if gold should drop today,
okay,
to $2,000,
all right,
everything they are mentioning is finished. It's gone. Don't forget, all the macroeconomic indicators you are mentioning, they've all been anchored on the gold buying program. All of it. And it's as a result of you hoping that the external factors with gold will become stronger. So again, you are not resilient. You are relying on the external factors. So again, it comes to support the fact that you have no strength should the external factors falter. Were we not in this country, when we told you here on this table that fuel prices have nothing to do with what this government has done? Because if you look at everything they have done, it tells you that there is very little component that goes into the fuel price. They said, no, we have brought, in fact, fellas came to argue here with me that when we came, fuel was 14, today is 9. I said, okay, no problem. If fuel was 14 when you came and today is 9, how is it that just 3 weeks? 3 weeks, 3 weeks of war. Look at what we are seeing. Russia-Ukraine has been running for almost about 2-3 years now. The world only adjusted, but the its effect has never gone away. We came on the back of a COVID pandemic, and yet we refuse to allow the realities to be discussed, and we push the entire conversations into politics.
All right.
My point here, Council, is this: the president should take it easy. He's already won an election. He doesn't need to tell us anything to make us happy. He just has to work. What he's telling us is not true. It's not factual. The evidence on the ground doesn't show that we are resilient. He hasn't introduced a single thing to prove resilience.
When we had inflation at 7.8, Addison said we were in a position to take cushion over the problems. We have inflation at 3.3%. The president is saying we are resilient, and you say what he's saying is not true. I don't get the difference. I don't get what you're trying to say.
We stay in Equafor. No, let me just end on that.
Thank you.
We stay in Equafor for a reason. Listen, we all know what governments do or can do to keep certain indicators at where they are. Go and pick the government's own budget in 2025. They spent just 30%. 30%.
Okay.